Hi, everybody. My name is Ge Payne, and I go with Payne, and I work with SSAI supporting NASA ESDS data governance activities. And today we have a session here on data governance activities, how we can work together to improve the interoperability. And I have Douglas here as a co-chair, also online, Sarah and Nancy, and they couldn't be here in person. And we will start with welcome everybody and please sign in to the Google Sheet. And then we will have Sarah, who is actually the chair of the session. We were just here supporting her as on site. She would setting a stage and followed by a brief survey carried out by Douglas. And the Douglas will make the first presentation, talk about the analysis of the result we did last year. This is actually a follow-on of the last year. The session, and we were told to continue the discussion, and we want to be a little bit more focused this year to see how we can improve the efficiency of the activities, basically do more with less. That was the same the session previously. Then we'll have the brainstorming, and Sarah also will talk a little bit about the idea coming up and for the part one, then we'll follow on with the second presentation by Dr. Emmanuel Salding. And I hope he will be able to join us online. I saw him earlier, but I haven't seen him signing yet. Then we will have the second brainstorming, and then we'll have the exercise of prioritizing and the session takeaways, and with the closing remark on how we can continue our discussion. Sarah? Do we need to share the slides?
I don't have slides,
Okay,
so I'm just
go ahead. Yeah.
gonna talk because it's easier to do that than to get slides approved. So a lot of us were at ESIP last year, where we had a data governance session that focused on data governance efforts at NOAA, USGS, and NASA at various levels. And I think one of the takeaways was that data governance is hard to do, and that it is done at various levels, and that we could do more. Last year, our focus was on improving impact, as it is this time, and we still very much care about improving impact, but part of our situation has very much changed in the federal government since last year. A lot of us are working less people and less resources, and we are very much focused on, at least at NASA, on streamlining and improving efficiency. And I think that is true at other agencies as well. And so this session, I think we had hoped to focus a bit on how data governance can help with that, with streamlining and improving efficiencies. So as it is, one of our main goals is to complete our move to the cloud effectively and efficiently. And then we're working to combine resources across the DACs. So things like consolidating ingest and archive. So instead of 11 DACs doing ingest and archive, we have one service for ingest and archive, and we have the DACs or DAC-like entities focusing on working with the users. So because we've got limited resources, we have to really work together so we can use our limited resources as well as possible. And we have to make sure that we're thinking, like as we're thinking consolidation, that data governance is part of that, so that we're not consolidating things that don't go together. So I think the question for this session was, how does data governance support this? what are data governance activities that we can use in our own agencies, and then across agencies working together to improve efficiency, reduce duplication, and improve the impact of our products. So what is data governance in a time of transition or in a time of streamlining? So last year we did a survey. Are we doing this survey again, Peng?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And we asked some questions, and we're going to do that again. And then we're going to compare it to what we discussed last year and see how that goes. So I'm going to turn this over to Doug, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I am going to share the screen again for our survey components of the session. And you will also find the link to the survey. It's basically one question. So you can in the note document where if you look at the screen, you can just scan the QR code, whether you're in person or in front of your computer. We're asking exactly the same question we asked a year ago. What does data governance mean to you or your organization in terms of requirements or objectives? So it will be really interesting to see how things have changed a year after a year with all the things has happened. If you live in Asheville, you lived through a flood and hurricane. Since this is a open-ended questions, please feel free to type as long as you want or as little words as you want for these questions. We can see the individual responses as well, and I think it's coming in standardization and designing inputs. Ooh, don't move, don't move. Designing inputs to meet identified outputs and impacts. Efficiency, that's a word that is loaded these days. Provide a rich responsibility and procedures on working with data, validation, fair, basis for good practices, making sure that data complies with increasing number of EOs, policies, and mandates. Great. I'm glad to see like 20, almost 30 people responding right now. And by the way, if you are not in the room, that we have almost, I think 30 people in the room, I would say, close to 30 people in the room and 20 people online. So that's a great turnout for the session today. Which leads me to, we have only 28 responses. So people. We can go back to word cloud to see what things comes up on the word cloud. I guess the word cloud is useless in this case. Everyone's talking about data, so data is in the middle. Data sharing, community needs, data use and access. Governance is essential. I saw that phrase in here as well. And investments, which it's a good, interesting topic in increasingly limited resources conditions. Okay, I think we are probably good on this survey exercises, and if you can keep responding as well, and we're gonna do some analysis of the responses that you provided this year and trying to compare with what I've seen in the last year. Thanks, we're almost at 40 responses now, so great. I am going to switch the screen sharing to the presentation that is summarizing what we have learned from you in the survey last year. And Sarah, please let me know if you don't see things that in the right situation. I assume
I
can
see
see
your
it, okay.
slides.
Okay, great. So this presentation is briefly summarizing what we have talked about in the we have heard from you from last year. So we had 4 questions in the survey last year in the session on data governance. And if I can advance. The first question we want to understand what interesting in this discussion around data governance. Ooh. I don't know what happened. There's supposed to be a figure, which did not show up here. Let me pull up the slides separately. See, we can see that the figure here, but not in the presentation mode. But give me 1 second. I'm just gonna do it this way. Okay, I'm not gonna in the full presentation mode because for some reason the figure is not showing in the full presentation modes. And so last survey when we did for the session at Ashwell ESA meeting, that a lot of people from data stewardship who has a role of data stewardship and management role are really interested in the conversation and discussion about data governance. But at the same time, we also have people who are producing data and who are using data are curious and interested in the discussion around data governance. And we also have a mysterious others category. And in that category, when we ask the follow-on questions, those are chief data officers or assistant chief data officers from different agencies. They don't quite fit themselves into a specific category in those, so they choose the other in the responses. So I think we can see that a lot of people are interested in the discussion about data governance and from different types of roles, but primarily it's from the data stewards as well as the data managers on those topics. So then we ask exactly the same question we asked to you all today, looking at what does data governance mean to you and your organizations in terms of requirements for all objectives. And so there are a lot of responses, about like 40, and also the same number of responses we received today. Those are a few themes I pulled out from the responses. The first one, people believe that data governance means the framework and some structure to really guide the improvement of the entire data ecosystems that can include piecing together different frameworks and principles to help moving the data ecosystems. And then the second one is that policies and principles and standards are important in the data governance to enable a lot of implementations in the data governance. And the third theme I think is really interesting that really emphasizes on the people in the process of data governance, and also how people and the process and technologies can enable a lot of data-related decision-making. I think that brings me to some of the sessions this year about the data product discontinuation conversation early on yesterday, and also I was not at a doing more with less, but I think there probably was some conversation about the people in the process as well. And another theme is consistency on the data management across organizations and communities. And I think that is one of the motivation for the session here on data governance as well, to learn more from different organizations who are doing data governance in that. And one negative side from the data governance when we ask this question is that the perception of data governance is basically another unfunded mandate or additional requirements to be done in a lot of data ecosystem, in the data community. So that is something had been brought up in the survey last year. So after discussion in the session, the second, and then we asked another question. So what are the priority areas of data governance for you after you have learned Because last year at Asheville, we have people from NOAA, NASA, USGS, and groups representing, discussing the data governance from different agencies. And so those are the 5 areas based on the response, right? Communication and collaboration across communities, which is quite validating for us to do a session that bring people together to talk about what has been done or what is going on with the data governance across different organizations, and then developing those incentives for data governance, which the response, one of the more direct response to that question is that carrots and sticks. So it's not just the incentives, but there's also certain maybe like requirements or penalty if you do not do things in the right way. And the third one is connecting with data users that can really inform the data governance processes. The last 2 includes both the change of the perception of data governance is really working with people in the data governance realm to help them understand the data governance better. So it's not just another unfunded mandates, but at the same time, probably you also need to provide sufficient resources to support data governance activities. And the last one, I think also we see the response on workforce capacity development for data governance, which is also an ongoing topic that I think different agencies or groups are very interested in that as well. So the last question we did last year was that what can ESIP or other groups help with the data governance objectives and priorities that has been identified or mentioned in the discussion of the session last year. So I think the first and the most commonly mentioned was building a community around data governance, which I think based on the 40-some people in the room and online, I think we are almost there for a community practice around what we want to do in ESIP around data governance, and then also trying to use this opportunity to facilitate those collaborations across different data governance efforts, and also to inform and lessons learned and sharing lessons learned across groups. And one specific suggestion or comments I felt it's quite interesting to bring up is that simplifying the data governance for project, which was also mentioned in last year's discussion, but I think it's relevant for the conversation here today. Is really doing more with less and make things more efficient on the data governance side to improve the data impact. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions or before we move on to the breakouts.
Thank you so much. That's excellent. I'm looking forward to see the difference between the last year and this year. Any questions in the room? Sarah, do you see anybody online?
I do not see anyone's hands online.
Okay, great. Thanks, Douglas. So we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which we will have a breakout session and discuss the challenges for enhancing the data impact through the data governance and interoperability. So the idea for the breakout session comes from Sarah, who attend a meeting, a training, innovative thinking training. Sarah, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Okay, yeah, so I went to a training a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, on creativity and innovation. That's what it was called, and it was designed for NASA people. But we worked on some very interesting kind of unrelated projects because the point was how to generate ideas that when you allow yourself to generate ideas without necessarily thinking, is this feasible or not, that sometimes you get ideas that are unexpected. So the way this goes is each of us spends 2 minutes writing down whatever ideas we think of on our own. Well, we're gonna break up into breakout rooms, but first, after that, then we write down whatever ideas come into our head, everything, no matter how stupid it sounds. Then you take a minute off from thinking and say hi to to the people who are next to you or in the breakout room with you. And then that gives your brain a chance to reset. Then you come back for a minute and it's kind of like, you know, you're in the meeting and you can't think of anything, but then in the shower later the next morning, all the ideas pop in. You give your brain a chance to reset for at least 1 minute, and then the ideas have a chance to pop in. Not quite the same as taking a night off and getting the shower, but you can't do that in an ESIP session, right? And then we'll have 5 minutes for sharing the ideas, and then 8 minutes to consolidate them, maybe join them together, but come up with something that we might want to share with the larger group. So that's what we're going to do for about just over 15 minutes.
Thank you, Sarah. I think you're going to have a large online group. Would that be okay?
Is it possible to break into 2 groups, maybe one with Nancy and one with me?
Can you make
okay
it
with that,
2
Nancy?
break rooms? Okay, so that'll be like a 10 person each. That would be,
I think that would be more manageable than 20.
yeah, I think 2 will be good. So Sarah will be in one and Nancy will be in one. So everything is going to try to captured in the Google Sheet. And there are section at the bottom, the part 1, and that has group 1, group 2, group 3, and online. So for the in room, we're going to have 2 like section on this side, maybe this 2 or 3 rows. Then let's see. So this is 3, and the other the last 2 rows, and you guys will be like one group. So you'll be one of the lower quadrant. You'll be one of the top quadrant. You could just pick one, and for the first 2 minutes, you just write down your own. But this is a grouping here, and on this side, we could have this go together, upper quadrant, and this will be the lower one. You guys are trying to convene a little bit, and probably pick a leader and pick a note writing, something in that nature. So for the first 2 minutes, and if you find the Google Sheets and go to the part 1 and write down, you can write down there. You actually, I think you write your own and we'll consolidate there. So we're gonna try this workflow and see how it works. If it's not, we'll improvise in real time. And now we're going to start 2 minutes.
Wait,
Yes, Sarah, go ahead. Are they able to? Okay. Okay, Nancy. Okay, Nancy, are you able to join a breakout room? She went. Okay. So 2 minutes, start now and write down your ideas on your own computer, in your paper, if you have a scratch. So let's do, this is upper left, because if you're looking at this and you're upper right, and that's the lower left and the lower right. Oh my God, we got have a scientist here. Figure it out. How many scientists it take to figure out which quadrant you're at? The online people are able to join? Okay, cool. So this is a challenges to enhance the data impact through interoperabilities. Can people online hear me too?
Okay.
Okay, now they stop. So they take a break for 1 minute. And for the group here, it's time to say hi to your neighbors. And in your group, and it's probably also a good time to kind of move your seating. Okay, now you have another minute to think about what you wrote, see whether you want to change that, anything. Yeah. Or add anything. Because your brain reset now, maybe you have a different idea now. It's like, He's online now. Yeah, yeah. I saw Eagle in building. Yeah.
I couldn't see it. He's probably.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just started down and thought half of these are like most of it has to have. It only got.
Okay. Now you have 5 minutes to share your ideas within your group. Yeah, you share idea, then you have another 5 minutes to prioritize, then put it in the Google Sheet. Now you share your idea among the groups. Yeah. You stop. And that was great discussion within your groups. And now for the next 5 minutes, we're going to consolidate that discussion and ideas and put it in the Google sheet in your relative. So everybody can put it in there, or you can, have one person to put in there. Break from brainstorming and have a second presentation. Then we'll go to the part 2. So we're still waiting. Okay. Okay, we'll wait for the online breakout rooms to close, and they may be somewhat 1 minute or so delayed because join. Okay, welcome back, everybody. And before we have another breakout session, and we have a Dr. Emmanuel Bording, and from Europe, and thank you for staying up late to talk to us about the framework of implementing PIDs. Would you like to drive the slides your end by sharing screen, or you want us to share slide?
I can share the screen, I think. Give me a second. We'll find the right screen.
We can hear you
Oops.
good. How about online people? So they're okay? Cool.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Yes. We can see it. We can hear you good too.
Okay, cool, because I don't have that green frame there. Okay, yes, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to briefly fill you in on what we're planning at the Helmholtz Association. We are working on on all kinds of data management issues across the organization. And this is basically a follow-up on a use case that I presented half a year ago, and that I also presented in previous years briefly. So I'll show you a little bit on what that means and what kind of progress we made. Okay, wait. There it is. So just a few words about what the Helmholtz Association is. We're a very large federal research organization in Germany, 18 centers, usually mostly large-scale infrastructures, accelerators, HPC facilities, imaging, polar stations, stuff like that. And we cover 6 research areas: Earth and environment, that's what I work for, health, energy, information, matter, and aerospace, and transport. And so it's roughly 45,000 employees. So it's really a very, very large organization. And my task, or our task of my group, is to basically look at all the data systems, in my case, in the Earth environment, take a look at what kind of challenge do we have, and what can we do to improve these systems. And in total, we have 7 centers that cover Earth and environment topics, and also I'm primarily working with those. So the first thing we are looking at, what do we want to achieve? Because that's really important for the organization to know. And what we defined as our goal is to establish what we call the fair metadata space. So that means that we want to be able to connect all the information we have by uniform means, so by harmonized structures, maybe PIDs, maybe semantics, interfaces, and so on, in order to connect all our to be able to connect all our research infrastructures into a research data ecosystem. And then once we have created this kind of metadata space, we can combine and complement the data. It can be interpreted by humans and machines, and we can basically open pathways for new scientific applications. So we do also have AI groups who are basically waiting for us to set up this data space. This is actually a big motivation for everybody to do that. So what we also did is we're trying to develop a roadmap towards FAIR. So as we all know, fair is a pretty broad term. So we can assume that the F and the A of the fair is mostly solved by most data infrastructure, but the I and the R are all big problems. So if we look at the I, we find four big what we call the building blocks. And the first building block is that we need to harmonize the use of PID types of PIDs. That is to be able to refer to the same information and to avoid redundancy in information. So if we have persons or organizations, we refer to the same metadata through PIDs. The second point is our semantic concepts that we need to implement to describe like measurements, methods, the mediums that were measured, and so on, attributes, units, with the relevant frameworks, like, for example, IADOPT. The third building block is the containerization of the data. So to be able to attach different information to the metadata. For example, which programs, software can you use to process the data, which software was used to process the data, and so on. And finally, we need, of course, harmonized interfaces and formats in order to be able to combine the data across multiple repositories. So these are the four steps that we're trying to implement, and I'm only talking about the first one now. So the first goal that is actually relatively simple, still difficult, but relatively simple, is how can we implement different PID types across all our organization. So the first thing we did is we evaluated a large number of different PID types, and I will not go through all of these. I'll just leave these in the slides so you can look them up. These are the criteria we use, and one of the main criteria that is actually important is does the PID type that is suggested have a solid governance and funding? So that's most important. We find that because we saw that most of the repositories were reluctant to introduce PIDs because they were not sure whether they will be there tomorrow still. So we need to have a good argument to recommend them. So what we came up with is actually not so surprising. We recommend like 6 basic PID types, which you for sure all know. This is the Crossref DOI for publications, it's DataCite for data sets, ORCIDs for people or in more general contributors, RORs for organizations, PIDs for instruments, and IGSNs for samples. So with these kind of basic PID systems, these are what we want to establish at our organization across the centers. Okay, so currently, this is how the data curation process currently works. So some researcher shows up, they have a publication, they already delivered their manuscript to the publisher. So once it's published, they will have a ROR and ORCIDs that will be taken care of by the publisher. The publication will have a Crossref, and the data curator sits there and tries to wrap his head around how can he describe the data, probably to move it on into the data repository. And of course, ideally, the data curators, they would like to nail different PID types to this data, but often that's not really possible. It's difficult because the researchers, they don't know these PIDs, the information is not progressing within the organization properly. So we're thinking about how can we fix that, and how can we make this work? Because and the underlying principle for us is that we cannot make the researcher responsible for everybody and for everything. We have to make different parts of the organization responsible for the information that they are supposed to manage, and basically feed this information that they manage into the workflows. So what we have is we basically have 4 layers, so to say, in the organization. That's first of all the researchers. Then we have, of course, information management, which is the repositories and the curators. We have technical services, people who measure stuff, who are responsible for the instruments, and we have, of course, the management and the administration of the centers. And they all have different roles, and most of them, they are not aware of their role in the system. They're just doing their job. They manage their data somehow for themselves, but there's no way, no organized way that this information is actually progressing. Okay, so no, as I said, no, the organization, there's the contributors, technicians, administration, scientists producing data, data curators, data infrastructures, and repositories. And basically, we sketch this kind of sketch of our center, where we do identify particular what we call institutional information interfaces. So basically interfaces where particular information passes through and where we're trying to grab this information and get these into our data systems. For example, for the ORCID, for example, we found it very or a good place to grab the ORCID, to record the ORCID into our system exactly when people are hired. So that when people who are hired to do get information about what is the ORCID about, what do we expect, did they update their ORCID from their previous employer, did they update the employer in their ORCIDs, and so on. So we can record the ORCIDs in our systems, and we already know who we have, who is there, and people can refer to that. And also, well, we have a number of recommendations for people. So the second thing is, for example, for the instrument PIDs. When instruments are acquired, we can already record instrument PIDs in the inventory department. So all the instruments are inventoried somewhere. So this is one place where we could do that. So we're taking a look at the different centers, and we're taking a look where are the places where this information passes through, and then we're trying to basically to build structures that allow us to pass these information to the research data libraries, repositories, wherever. But the point is that we need individual solutions for the individual centers. That's quite important. So what we did then is, these are basically, these red boxes are basically these interfaces. So the top box for the RORs, for example, we could say the outreach department could be made responsible for the ROR, and then they're supposed to maintain and update the ROR. The ORCID is recorded when it's hired, the IGSN is recorded in the field, and so on. So what we created is a set of recommendations for each of these PID systems, where we basically ask people, or we tell people what we expect them to do in this framework. So the goal is to first of all show people what their responsibility is, and how what their part is in the system, what their role is in the system, and then how the system works. For example, for the ROR, we assign the responsibility. The researcher is supposed to look up the ROR. The ROR is always supposed to be in the imprint of the website, for example. So there needs to be a standard place where people can look up the ROR. And the data infrastructures are supposed to record the ROR whenever they refer to organizations. And we do the same thing for ORCIDs, for example. I won't go through everything. You can, if you're interested in that, just go through the slides. And there's a number of recommendations that we require. So ORCIDs, so we do the same for instrument PIDs. The technicians are supposed to label their instrument with these instrument PIDs. They're also supposed to deliver instrument PIDs with all the measurements that they conduct. Same with the IGSNs, which are taken on the ships, in the fields, by satellites, and so on. Okay, then the other thing we're looking at is what kind of technical solutions do we need? For example, what we're currently looking at are electronic lab notebooks, not to implement lab notebooks into the whole data management process because they provide good means to wrap these whole processes into a digital tool. The problem with that is that often these do not exist in an organization-wide manner. So we're trying to take a look at where can we install these centrally and to offer these kind of tools to everyone. Yeah. Okay. So what we are currently we did get backing for this kind of concept by our management roughly 2 months ago. They knew about it for longer, but like one or 2 months ago, they said, "Okay, go ahead, do it." No, which is important. That's what I just mentioned. A mandate is always important because at some point you will disturb people. So the next thing we did is we're prioritizing which bits to implement first. So the first ones that we are currently doing is ORCID and ROR, and we're doing that because those are the best understood ones. You know, they're relatively easy to implement because most people already use them. PIDINS, the instrument PIDs, is a little bit more complicated, but it's also not that difficult to do because it's not yet very well implemented, and it's mainly structured, mainly involves technicians, the labs, and the acquisition, as I said. And IGSN is the last one is actually more complicated to do because you need to deal with the field, and you need the whole progress within the sample treatment line, which makes it a little bit more complicated. That's why this is the last on our list. We assume that Crossref DOI and DataSite DOI is already well implemented. So then we took a look at the centers. Also, we kind of evaluating the centers. How difficult is it to implement those? So we're starting in our case with Geomar GFZ and then going through towards the bigger centers and also through the more diverse centers to implement it there and then take a look at how can we approach the administration there. And the third thing we need is a good communication strategy. The communication strategy involves that people know why we're going to do that, what is the overall goal, what do we want to achieve, and that the management supports that. That's also quite important. Once we have that, so no, we can basically create, and we're in the process of doing that, create kind of fact sheets on what we expect. Now, the 5 rules how to implement that, kind of a couple of training courses. You know, we're not yet exactly clear what exactly we need, but we're pretty sure we do need a couple of that. And then the idea is that we are learning from the first centers what can go wrong, then adapt that, and then roll that out into the larger centers step by step. And then we're going through the ELN. And the final thing is that you see at the very end is that we are documenting all that into a wiki where people can actually look up what the strategy is in the end. So if you like, you can, of course, take a look at the wiki. Don't expect too much. This is heavily work in progress, but we're trying to, as I said, have all the background there. Okay, so what are the next steps that we plan to do? Of course, the semantics are on our roadmap. Then defining interfaces for the different repositories, use of data containers. That's all for the interoperability, and then we move on to the reusability parts, which includes licenses, provenance, quality assessment, and so on. And finally, also, of course, valuing RDM practices and achievements within the organization. Yeah, that's what we're currently working on. Yeah, I think within the last half year we made big progress. we found it's important to start with the centers where we have good, so first of all, with the smaller centers. So the center where I work has roughly 1,000 employees. It has a good number of administrative people, but we still know them very well. We have other centers with more than 5,000 people where the contact is not that good. So we're trying to start with the more easy ones in order to learn where the friction is, and then try to roll it out to the others. Yes, that's it from my side. I have a couple of more slides which you can take a look at, which summarize exactly what the responsibilities are and what we expect. There are a number of decisions on the way that we have to make, and yeah, you will find them in the slides, or you can check it out.
Thank you so much for the excellent presentation. We have time for a couple questions. I do see some couple online. James has asked, do you have a workflow for instruments that fall below the limits of asset registration threshold?
Yeah, the workflow is you can see it. You know, it's not very detailed. You know, so the idea is that there is a number with the instrument. The technician is responsible for that, and they pass it on directly with the data. You know, so I don't know if you can see my mouse, but no, so once the sample is taken, something is measured, the fit-in stays with the data, and it will never leave the data. And the data curators are responsible for that, and the technicians together. You know, so we basically what we're working on a recommendation system. You know, so we're issuing a lot of recommendations, and we're trying to basically issue fact sheets or help sheets for the different groups that will help them to conduct their tasks.
Thank you. In the interest of time, we probably would move on. And Stephanie has a question in the chat. If you don't mind to communicate with her on that particular one. Thank
Sure,
you.
happy to answer that.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the second breakout session. We were hoping for a bigger, longer session, a breakout session for that particular question is what can you do, things we can do to enhance the data interoperability through the data governance activities. However, we do want to have some time for prioritization as well as the the top 3 key takeaways and closings. So trying to make that 15 minutes. So we'll still have 2 minutes for write down, 1 minute breakout reset, and another minutes to revisit, and 5 minutes for separate 5 minutes for shares as well as to consolidate. And sorry for the online group that we had to pull you out back in sooner than you would like to. So you probably would have less than 15 minutes. Sarah and Nancy, are you able to have a breakout? Okay, yes, go. Breakout. Online breakout rooms are open. Please join your breakout rooms. So for the in room, I am going to set to 2 minutes. And so this is time you write down your own ideas. And the question is, what are the things you can do to facilitate data governance activities, cross-agency and repository for enhanced data interoperability? So what you or your organizations or projects can do. Okay, everybody, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to prioritizing the ideas we come up in the part 1 and part 2. So you can do as a group or you can do as individually. We can do it in the Google Doc. And if you click on the part 1, part 2 for Google Doc part, and we also have a mirror board that you can put the sticker notes there. If you want to vote up, you can just say put +1 or something on that particular note. So we have 5 minutes for that. For the challenging ones, we have the most common, was unique, need most explanations. That one just say is not common, in other words. For the ideas for things you can do, we have the most challenging one, most impactful, and the low-hanging fruit. For prioritizing, I think we were just kind of like looking at it, put 3 and top 3, and other people can say, I agree or not agree. And I think easiest one is just look at the group you have, maybe pick something there. Or you can look at everybody has put it in the. Maybe next time we would have a half an hour, like a whole afternoon to work on this.
We just need the sticky notes so we can move things around.
Exactly. We could have a board, just, people actually put it down. The board is too small. Don't worry about the layout and the formatting. And I think the board will be available even after sessions. If we don't get to put it, the items that you would like to, you can always do that afterwards. Okay, that was fun. We'll continue to do that. At the same time, I think we're going to forego the top 3 key takeaways from the session, and feel free to put some, 1 or 2, if you get a chance to do that. It's almost to the half an hour. We don't want to postpone the session too much. And on behalf of the co-chairs, and I'd like to thank everybody for being here, and especially given the challenge of room change and getting lost on the way here. So it was wonderful to see you all. And thank you everybody online, and including people from Australia, and especially EU people. It's very late for them. And we would like to continue the discussion and the conversation. So there are a number of venues we have, and I will be leading the data stewardship committee going forward. And one of the activities will be to how to enhance the sharing, especially along alignment with FAIR. So we welcome your participation if you're interested in the topic. And another part is that we have a HU session, and the link is in the Google Doc. There's a lot of uncertainties whether we will be able to attend HU, but the abstract, the deadline is July 30th. And so for if you're able to, we'll welcome you to submit abstract. I know you may have same uncertainty in term attending. If you could submit abstract, we welcome your contribution. And we also welcome the comments or suggestions of other ways we can continue the conversation and the things we can do to have to enhance the interoperability across organizations. And I am going to give the last word to Sarah. Oh yeah, I'd also like to thank the wonderful fellow, Kelsey, and thank you for your support. Sarah, would you like to have the last word before we adjourn the session?
Thanks everyone for coming. And thank you, Peng, for being willing to step in. I didn't get my conference approval till Monday afternoon. So Peng was gonna step in and run this all by herself, with Doug, who was approved. Yes, but yeah, so and there were so many changes as people were, you know, planned speakers and last minute speakers, as people who planned to come were not given permission. So I really appreciate everything that Peng did, and I appreciate all of you who showed up, especially those East Coast people and the EU people who, you know, it's kind of late for us. So
That's correct. And it's also
for making
wonderful
the
to have
effort.
the Australia people as well.
And the Australia people,
We
yeah.
got a couple, several people from the Australia hub. Well,
That's
thank you
awesome.
again. And the research showcase is outside, and I think it's probably starting now. Hope see you guys tomorrow.